I'm Maya Rodriguez, 25, and 6 months ago I walked away from my family with nothing but a laptop and a dream. 3 days ago, a viral video changed everything when 25 million people watched my parents call me a failure while I sat 10 feet away as a multimillionaire they didn't recognize. But let me start from the beginning. Last March, I sat at our family's dining table in Beverly Hills watching my parents hand my sister Jessica the keys to a brand new BMW i8. $150,000 worth of hybrid supercar gleaming in our driveway like a monument to their favoritism. For graduating UCLA with honors, Mom beamed, practically glowing as Jessica squealed and hugged the keys to her chest. Our little genius deserves the best. Dad nodded, adjusting his Rolex. Nothing's too good for our star. Pre-med at Stanford in the fall. Then who knows? Maybe Harvard Medical School. I picked at my salmon, stomach churning. For 4 years, I'd watched them fund Jessica's perfect life. Sorority dues, spring break trips to Cabo, a luxury apartment near campus, designer everything. Meanwhile, I'd been grinding 80-hour weeks building my social media marketing agency from my childhood bedroom. The irony? Dad had just closed a commercial property deal that netted him a $200,000 commission. Instead of paying down the second mortgage they'd taken on the house, they bought Jessica a car worth more than most people's homes. Then Mom turned to me, her smile vanishing like someone had flipped a switch. Maya, starting next month, you'll need to contribute $2,800 for rent and utilities. It's time you learned some responsibility. The fork froze in my hand. Jessica was posting Instagram stories of her new car while I was getting a bill for existing in my own family's house. But Mom, I've been paying for groceries, covering the utilities when Dad's deals fall through. That's different, Dad interrupted, not looking up from his wine. Those were voluntary contributions. This is about teaching you to be an adult. Jessica's achievements show what happens when you apply yourself instead of playing around on Instagram all day. Playing around. My agency that I'd built from zero, that already had 3 steady clients pulling in $15,000 a month, was just playing around to them. I stood up, chair scraping against marble. I need some air. Walking to my room, I heard Jessica's laughter echoing through the hallway as she FaceTimed her friends about the car. My parents' voices carried too, discussing her Stanford dorm preferences and whether she needed a credit card with a higher limit. Nobody asked where I was going. Nobody ever did. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and started packing. Not my clothes, those could wait. I packed my business. Client contracts, equipment, my entire operation. By 3 a.m., I'd moved my entire company to a WeWork space in downtown LA that I'd been eyeing for months. I left a note on my desk, gone to learn some responsibility. Don't wait up. The silence from my family was deafening. No calls, no texts, no "are you okay?" Nothing. For 3 days, I waited for someone to reach out. Instead, I saw Jessica's Instagram stories from her celebration dinner at Nobu, Mom posting about proud parent moments, and Dad sharing articles about Stanford's pre-med program. I realized something that should have been obvious years earlier. I was invisible to them unless I was useful. So I decided to become invisible completely. 3 months later, I was crushing it. My agency, Rodriguez Digital, had exploded beyond anything I'd dreamed. The 3 clients I'd started with had referred me to others. A viral campaign I created for a startup caught Netflix's attention. They hired me for a trial project, a social media strategy for a new series. When it increased their pre-launch engagement by 23%, they signed me for a full contract. Then Disney reached out, having seen the Netflix work. They wanted fresh perspectives on reaching Gen Z audiences. That led to Apple, then Google. Each contract built on the last, word spreading through Silicon Valley about the 25-year-old who understood social media like no one else. My team had grown from just me to 15 employees. We were running campaigns that generated millions in revenue for Fortune 500 companies. I was living in a sick loft in Manhattan Beach, driving a Tesla Model S Plaid that cost more than Jessica's BMW. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The money was insane. My personal take-home in those 3 months was more than Dad's real estate company made in a year. I'd gone from being the family disappointment to quietly becoming the most successful person any of us knew. And they had no idea. My parents called exactly twice in those 3 months. Both times to ask if I could help out with Jessica's expenses. Her Stanford textbooks were expensive, apparently. Could I chip in like old times? I sent them to voicemail. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and it was about to play the biggest joke of my life. I was grabbing coffee at this trendy spot in Santa Monica, working on a campaign proposal for a major streaming service, when I spotted them across the patio. Mom, Dad, and Jessica, having what looked like a very serious conversation. Jessica was crying, which was weird because Jessica never cried in public. It ruined her makeup. I almost left, but something made me stay. Maybe curiosity. Maybe that toxic pull family has even when they've treated you like garbage. I grabbed a table behind a large plant where they couldn't see me and opened my laptop to work while I listened. The place was crowded, filled with the usual Santa Monica crowd of influencers and startup bros. But their conversation was carrying clearly. The business is hemorrhaging money, Dad was saying, his voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. That Riverside development fell through completely, and the investors pulled out of the Newport project after the inspection issues. Mom's hands were shaking as she stirred her latte. What about Jessica's tuition? Stanford costs $80,000 a year, and she's only halfway through her first semester. I don't know, Linda. I honestly don't know. We might have to sell the house. My fingers froze over my keyboard. Sell the house. The Beverly Hills mansion they'd bought when Dad's business was booming, the one they'd charged me rent to live in? And the BMW? Mom asked quietly. 3 months behind on payments. They're threatening to repossess it. Jessica looked up from her tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Can't we ask Maya? She always helped before. Maybe she's got something saved up from her little internet thing. Dad scoffed, and the sound made my stomach clench. Maya. She's probably sleeping on some friend's couch, pretending to be an entrepreneur. You think she has Stanford money? She couldn't even handle paying us rent. Her business was probably just some MLM scheme, Mom added, making air quotes with her manicured fingers. You know how she is with her fantasies. Always talking about clients and campaigns. I doubt she even has a real job. That's when I noticed the girl at the next table. She was maybe 19, with bright pink hair and enough piercings to set off a metal detector. She'd been staring at me, her eyes growing wider by the second. She was holding up her phone, and I realized with a jolt that she was recording. She wasn't recording me, she was recording herself, but I was clearly visible in the background. Oh my God, that's Maya Rodriguez. The Maya Rodriguez from the Entrepreneur magazine cover. My heart stopped. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as 25 under 25. The young millionaires disrupting everything. The article had mentioned my net worth, $4.2 million at 25 years old. It had also mentioned that I'd built my company, despite family doubts and financial challenges. The pink-haired girl was now openly filming, switching between selfie mode and recording my family. Guys, you're not going to believe this, she whispered to her camera. I'm literally watching millionaire Maya Rodriguez's family call her a failure. They're sitting right behind her and have no idea. This is insane. But it got worse. My family was getting louder, their conversation becoming more desperate and detailed. Mom was crying now too, talking about how they'd refinanced the house twice to cover Jessica's expenses and Dad's failed investments. We gave her everything, Mom was saying. Private school, tutoring, the car, the apartment. We believed in her dreams. Why couldn't Maya just be more like Jessica? The girl with the pink hair was still recording, her friend now filming too. Other people in the coffee shop were starting to notice the commotion. I saw at least 3 other phones come out. Dad continued his rant, oblivious to the growing audience. Maya was always the difficult one. Never grateful, never focused. We tried to teach her responsibility with that rent situation, but she just ran off like a child. Probably living in some shared apartment, still playing entrepreneur on social media. At least Jessica appreciates what we've done for her, Mom added. Pre-med at Stanford. That's real success, not whatever Maya thinks she's doing with computers. Jessica, still crying, looked directly toward my hiding spot. For a moment, I thought she'd seen me. I just wish Maya would grow up and help the family for once. We all have to make sacrifices. That did it. The girl with the pink hair posted the video immediately, and I watched her screen as she typed the caption. POV, you're secretly a multimillionaire but your family thinks you're broke and homeless. The disrespect is unreal. At Maya Rodriguez Official. The video showed me in the background, clearly visible, working on my laptop in my designer clothes and $50,000 worth of jewelry, while my family literally discussed how I was probably homeless and delusional. The contrast was so stark it looked staged. Within 30 minutes, it had 100,000 views. Within 2 hours, it had 1 million views. Within 6 hours, it had 5 million views and someone had identified Maine. By the next morning, it had 25 million views and every major news outlet was picking up the story. The comments were absolutely brutal. This woman built a $4 million company and her family thinks she's homeless. I can't even. Dad really said, playing entrepreneur, about someone who made Forbes 30 under 30. The audacity. The sister crying about Stanford tuition while her sister could literally buy the university. This family is delusional. Family gave one daughter a BMW and the other daughter a rent bill. Then wondered why she left. Make it make sense. Why couldn't Maya be more like Jessica? Because Maya was busy becoming a millionaire while Jessica was spending their money. That's why. The way they're talking about her like she's a failure when she's literally more successful than all of them combined. This is insane. But the comments that really got me were the ones from other entrepreneurs. I've worked with Rodriguez Digital. Maya's campaigns are legendary in our industry. Her Netflix work alone probably made them tens of millions. This family has no idea who they're talking about. Maya Rodriguez spoke at our conference last year. She's brilliant. Watching her family call her a failure while she's literally revolutionizing digital marketing is painful. My phone rang. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Maya. Her voice was panicked, desperate, completely different from her dismissive tone just hours earlier. We need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I kept my voice calm, but inside I was shaking with rage and vindication. What kind of misunderstanding? We didn't know about your business. We didn't know you were doing so well. The internet is saying things, and we're getting calls from reporters, and you didn't know because you never asked, I interrupted. For 4 years, I tried to tell you about my company, my clients, my success. You told me to get serious and stop playing games. Silence on the other end. I could hear Dad in the background, his voice urgent. Ask her if the Forbes thing is real. Maya, please. Can you come home? We need to discuss this as a family. Now you want to discuss it? After the whole world knows how you really feel about me. We didn't mean those things. We were stressed about money, and we said things we didn't mean. You meant every word. The only thing you're sorry about is that 25 million people heard you say it. My assistant texted me, CNN wants an interview. So does Good Morning America. Your story is everywhere. Also, we just got inquiries from 12 new Fortune 500 companies. The irony was perfect. My social media marketing agency had gone viral, but not because of a campaign I designed. It went viral because my own family had humiliated me so publicly that strangers felt bad for me. Dad took the phone. His voice was different. Smaller. Desperate. Mija, come home. Let's fix this. Fix what, exactly? The fact that you think I'm a failure, or the fact that everyone now knows you think I'm a failure? We were wrong. We should have supported you. We should have believed in you. You're not wrong because I became successful, Dad. You're wrong because you never even tried to understand what I was building. You decided I was worthless and stuck to that story even when evidence suggested otherwise. What evidence? His voice was defensive. You never told us. I tried to show you my first major client contract. You said I was being naive about business. I tried to share my Forbes nomination. You said it was probably a scam. I tried to explain why I was working such long hours. You said I was making excuses for not having a real job. The silence stretched between us. Every family dinner for 2 years, I tried to share something about my work. You changed the subject to Jessica's grades, Jessica's achievements, Jessica's future. I became invisible unless you needed something from me. We didn't realize. You didn't want to realize. It was easier to have one successful daughter and one disappointment than to admit you might have been wrong about me. I hung up. Over the next 48 hours, the story exploded beyond social media. Business Insider ran a piece titled, "The $4 million Entrepreneur Her Family Thought Was Homeless." Forbes did a follow-up interview about family dynamics and entrepreneurial success. The Ellen Show called. So did The Tonight Show. My agency's waiting list went from 20 companies to 300. Everyone wanted to work with the woman whose own family had underestimated her so spectacularly. My team was overwhelmed with inquiries. But the real kicker came when the second video dropped. Someone at the coffee shop had been recording when they saw people filming and checked their phones. The pink-haired girl had actually walked over and shown them her viral video. The footage showed Mom Googling my name on her phone, her face going white as the search results loaded. Dad frantically calling someone, probably his lawyer, asking if they'd seen the situation. Jessica's horror as she realized her crying about Stanford tuition had been broadcast to millions. The second video showed Jessica saying, "Oh my God, Maya's really successful? Like, actually successful." And Mom responding, "This says she's worth over $4 million. How is that possible?" The comments on the second video were even worse. They're only upset because they got caught, not because they were wrong. The sister's shock that her sister is successful tells you everything about this family. How is that possible? Because she's talented and you never bothered to notice. That's how. Watch them try to play happy family now that they know she has money. 3 days after the video went viral, Jessica showed up at my office in Manhattan Beach. She looked completely different from the confident pre-med student I'd grown up with. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her usually perfect hair was in a messy bun, and she had the kind of dark circles that come from not sleeping. "Maya," she said, standing in my conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows. "I need to apologize." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. My office was impressive. Modern furniture, awards on the walls, a view of the city skyline. She kept looking around like she couldn't reconcile this reality with her image of her failure sister. For what, exactly? For everything. For not standing up for you. For letting them treat you like that. For thinking. She trailed off, staring out the window. For thinking what? For thinking I was better than you because I was following the traditional path. College, med school, the whole thing. For assuming your business wasn't real because I didn't understand it. For never once asking you about your work or your life or what you were actually building. She sat down across from me, and for the first time in years, I really looked at my sister. Without the armor of confidence and parental approval, she looked young and lost. "I watched the videos," she continued. "All of them. And the comments. And I realized I don't know my own sister at all. I lived in the same house with you for years and had no idea you were building something incredible. And now that the whole world knows what I built, now I realize I've been living in a bubble. Mom and Dad created this narrative where I was the golden child and you were the problem child, and I just accepted it. I never questioned why they treated us so differently. I was quiet, processing her words. The Stanford tuition, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad really can't pay it. I nodded. His business is failing. The house is over-leveraged. Your car payments are 3 months behind. She looked stricken. I had no idea things were that bad. They kept saying everything was fine, that they were just being careful with money. They weren't being careful with money. They were spending money they didn't have to maintain an image they couldn't afford. And they were charging me rent while doing it. Maya, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-interest. But she just looked genuinely ashamed and lost. What do you want from me, Jessica? I want to know my sister. The real you, not the version of you I made up in my head based on Mom and Dad's narrative. Maya, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-interest. But she just looked genuinely ashamed and lost. What do you want from me, Jessica? I want to know my sister. The real you, not the version of you I made up in my head based on Mom and Dad's narrative. Me of our biggest success stories. This Netflix campaign, she said, studying the presentation on my laptop. You created a whole social media ecosystem around their show before it even launched. We identified micro-influencers in key demographics, created shareable content that felt organic, not promotional. The pre-launch buzz drove their biggest first-week viewership for a new series. That's genius. And they pay you how much for this? That campaign. $2.8 million. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. How long have you been doing this level of work? 2 years at this scale. But I started the company 4 years ago, right after high school while you were starting at UCLA. And I never knew. I lived in the same house with you for 2 of those years. And I never knew. By the end of our conversation, Jessica was crying again. But these weren't tears of self-pity like at the coffee shop. These were tears of genuine remorse. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. But I want to earn it. I want to be the sister I should have been all along. What about Stanford? The tuition. She wiped her eyes. I'll figure it out. Student loans, transferring to a state school, getting a job. I can't keep living off money the family doesn't have. I was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. I'll pay for it, I said finally. Her eyes widened. Maya, you don't have to. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for you. But there are conditions. She nodded quickly. First, you earn it. Grades, research, showing me this matters to you beyond the status and prestige. Second, you work for my company during breaks and summers. Learn what I actually do instead of assuming it's nothing. Third, you stand up to them when they're wrong. About anything. About anyone. I will. I promise. All of it. And fourth, I added, you help me understand why our parents created such different expectations for us. Because I need to process this, and you're the only other person who lived through it. She hugged me then, and for the first time in years, it felt like I had a sister instead of a stranger who happened to share my DNA. My parents were a different story entirely. They showed up at my office the next day, uninvited and clearly desperate. Security called to ask if I wanted them removed, but I told them to send my parents up. I wanted to have this conversation in my space, surrounded by evidence of my success they'd spent years denying. They walked into my conference room looking like they'd aged 10 years in 10 days. The internet had not been kind to them. Mom's social media accounts had been flooded with comments calling her the worst mother in America. Dad's real estate business had lost 6 major clients who didn't want to work with the man who called his millionaire daughter a failure. Local news stations had picked up the story. Someone had doxed them, posting their address and business information online. They'd been getting calls from reporters, internet trolls, and random people who'd seen the video. "Maya," Mom started, but I held up my hand. "Before you say anything, I want you to understand something. I'm not angry because you didn't know I was successful. I'm angry because you decided I was worthless without ever bothering to find out who I actually was." Dad opened his mouth to argue. "I tried to share my wins with you. Every client I landed, every milestone I hit, every breakthrough moment. You shut me down every time. You told me to get a real job. You treated me like a child playing pretend while you celebrated Jessica for doing exactly what millions of other students do every year." Mom was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. "We thought we were being responsible parents. We thought we were pushing you to succeed. You were pushing me to succeed at what you thought success looked like. It never occurred to you that I might define it differently, or that I might actually be good at something you didn't understand. But you never told us how much money you were making," Dad protested. "We had no idea. I tried to show you my contracts. You said I was being naive about business realities. I tried to explain my client relationships. You said I was getting scammed by people on the internet. I tried to show you industry articles about my work. You didn't read them." I stood up, walking to the wall where my awards were displayed. "I've been featured in Forbes twice. Entrepreneur magazine 3 times. I spoke at South by Southwest, TechCrunch Disrupt, and the Digital Marketing World Forum. My campaigns have been case studies at Harvard Business School. And you thought I was sleeping on someone's couch." The room went quiet except for the sound of traffic outside my window. "The rent bill," I said, turning back to face them. "While you were buying Jessica a $150,000 car with money from a commission you should have used to pay down debt, you charged me $2,800 to live in my childhood bedroom. Do you understand how that felt?" "We were trying to teach you independence," Dad said weakly. "No, you were punishing me for not being Jessica. You were making me pay for the privilege of being the disappointment in my own family. And when I left, rather than continue being your emotional and financial punching bag, you told people I'd run away like a child." I walked back to my desk, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. "This is a financial breakdown of everything I contributed to this family over the past 4 years. Grocery bills when Dad's deals fell through. Jessica's textbooks and supplies. Car repairs, utility bills, even Mom's birthday dinner at that expensive restaurant downtown." I slid the folder across the table. "The total is $47,000. Money I gave freely because I thought we were a family supporting each other." They stared at the documents, Mom's hands shaking as she flipped through the receipts and bank statements. "You kept track of all this?" Dad asked, his voice hollow. "I kept track because I'm a businesswoman, and businesswomen track their expenses. I never intended to use it against you. I just wanted to understand where my money was going." "Maya," Mom said, reaching across the table. "We're so sorry. We made terrible mistakes. We can fix this. We can be better." I looked at her outstretched hand but didn't take it. "Can you? Because this isn't about a few harsh comments or misunderstandings. This is about fundamental disrespect for who I am as a person. You created a narrative where Jessica was the successful daughter and I was the failure, and you stuck to that narrative even when reality contradicted it." "We'll do anything," Dad said. "Anything to make this right. The first thing you can do is stop acting like this is about money. This isn't about me being rich and you needing my help. This is about you treating one daughter like a princess and the other like a burden, then being shocked when the burden turned out to be more successful than the princess." I sat back down, maintaining eye contact with both of them. "Jessica is working to rebuild our relationship because she recognizes what went wrong and wants to change it. What I need from you is the same thing. Not apologies, not promises, but actual understanding of why your behavior was harmful. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We just wanted Jessica to have opportunities we never had. College, graduate school, a professional career. And you assumed I didn't want those things? You assumed I was less capable of achieving them. No, You just what? Thought I was lazy, stupid, unambitious. The silence stretched uncomfortably. We thought you were easily distracted, Dad said finally. You were always on your computer, always talking about ideas that seemed unrealistic. We worried you'd waste your 20s chasing internet dreams instead of building something stable. So you decided to crush my confidence and charge me rent to motivate me? We thought tough love would help you focus. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tough love. Is that what you call refusing to acknowledge my achievements, dismissing my work as playing around, and treating me like a financial burden while spoiling my sister? They had no answer for that. Here's what's going to happen, I said, opening another folder. Jessica's Stanford tuition is handled. I've already paid the next 2 years in full. Her housing, books, everything she needs to complete her degree. Their faces flooded with relief. But, I continued, this isn't charity, and it's not me rescuing the family. This is me investing in my sister's future because she's shown me she's willing to change and grow. I slid another document across the table. This is a loan agreement for you too. $100,000 to help with your immediate financial crisis. It covers 3 months of house payments, car payments, and basic living expenses while Dad rebuilds his business. Dad reached for the document eagerly, but I held up my hand. Read the terms first. It's a 5-year loan at market interest rates. You'll make monthly payments just like any other loan. Miss 3 payments, and the full amount becomes due immediately. Maya, that's very generous. It's not generous. It's a business transaction. I'm not your daughter rescuing you out of obligation. I'm a successful businesswoman making a calculated investment in family stability. I stood up again, signaling the meeting was over. You have 48 hours to decide if you want the loan. If you do, you sign the agreement and we proceed with clear financial boundaries. If you don't, you figure out your situation without me. What about us? Mom asked. What about our relationship? That depends on whether you can learn to see me as I actually am instead of who you decided I was. Jessica is making that effort. I'm willing to see if you can too. They left that afternoon with the loan documents and a lot to think about. 2 weeks later, Jessica started working at my company as a marketing assistant. She was smart, eager to learn, and surprisingly good at client relations. Watching her interact with our team, seeing her genuine interest in the work, I realized she'd never been the spoiled princess I'd resented. She'd just been a kid responding to the environment our parents created. My parents signed the loan agreement and made their first payment on time. Dad's business was slowly recovering, helped by the fact that potential clients now knew his daughter was successful enough to keep him afloat. Mom had started therapy to understand her role in the family dynamics that had caused so much damage. But the real victory wasn't the money or the viral fame or even the family reconciliation. It was that I finally stopped needing their approval. Now has 89 million views across all platforms. I've been invited to speak at business schools about entrepreneurship and family dynamics. My agency is booked solid for the next 2 years, and we've had to hire 30 more employees to handle demand. The Ellen Show interview aired last month. When she asked what I wanted people to take away from my story, I said, sometimes the people closest to you are the least able to see who you're becoming. Don't let their limitations limit your potential. But the moment that really mattered came 3 weeks ago, at Jessica's birthday dinner. She'd chosen a small restaurant instead of the usual lavish celebration, and for the first time in years, the conversation wasn't about her achievements or my shortcomings. We talked about books, travel, her research, my latest client challenges. Normal sibling stuff. As we were leaving, she hugged me and said, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I hugged her back, feeling something I hadn't felt since we were kids, like we were actually family. The internet called it the ultimate revenge story. I call it the day I realized I'd already won, long before anyone else noticed. Sometimes going viral isn't about the content you create. Sometimes it's about the truth that was always there, waiting for the right moment to be seen. Mine just happened to be recorded at a coffee shop in Santa Monica, by a stranger who recognized something my own family never did. I was already exactly who I was supposed to be. And now, finally, so did they.